Welcome. Did you know that penguins not only lived in sub-freezing temperatures, but many penguins also live off the coastlines of South Africa? Did you also know that not all penguins believe they can't fly? Just maybe there's one who thinks she can. Let's dive in to Penguins Can't Fly, written by me, Michael Woodward Jr. Believe in yourself, even when no one else seems to. Michael Woodward Jr. A South African penguin sat alone in the sand. And although she had wings, she was stuck on land. She built sandcastles that towered high into the sky, to a place she dreamed of going, if only she could fly. Along the pier, fishermen tossed out their lines, as speedboats noisily whisked on by. Tired of wishing with all her might, Phae climbed to a cliff and prepared to take flight. "Look at Phae," a penguin down below her cried. "She's back at it again with yet another try. She's going to hurt herself," another penguin replied. "Doesn't she know that penguins can't fly?" At first, her wings caught the wind and she shouted, "Here I go!" But soon she plunged into the deep water below. The splish-splashing penguins, who had seen her fail to try, laughed and asked, why does she even try? As Phae swam to the beach in the choppy surf, she had an idea that she thought just might work. "If I collect palm tree leaves and bind them with rope, I could fly farther out over the sea, I hope." The other penguins chuckled as she made her way to shore, but she focused on making her next attempt better than before. The defeat had been painful, but she was ready for another try. She lifted her head, adjusted her scarf, and waddled on by. The next morning, when conditions were just right, she tied on her palms and climbed out of sight. She waited for the wind and said a little prayer, and before she knew it, she was in the air, gliding on the wind with the waves far below. The penguin felt more joy than she'd ever known. She shouted into the wind with all her might, "I knew I could do it. I've succeeded in flight." Phae flapped the palms as hard as she could and caught the wind just as she hoped she would. She floated and soared like she did in her dreams, but the penguins on the beach were still being mean. "Look at Phae," one called. "She thinks she's so cool. But anyone who thinks penguins can fly is a fool." Another said, "Maybe this will be her last try. It's time she accepts that penguins can't fly." Her joy vanished as quickly as it had arrived when Phae's wings lost the wind and she fell from the sky. A friendly boater offered a helping hand and she waddled toward her father, back on land. Her dad had been watching in fear while he fished and had seen Phae's attempt at her greatest wish. "Why, Daddy?" she asked. "Why can't I fly? The toucans and macaws barely have to try." "You're a penguin, Princess Phae. We do what we can. We keep our heads above water and our feet in the sand. I watch you every day. I see how hard you try. But do you truly believe that penguins can fly?" "I do believe it, Daddy. I know we can. We're meant for more than just playing in the sand." Her father shook his head as he tossed out his line, nearly hooking a speedboat whizzing on by. Phae squinted and scratched her chin in the sun. An idea was bubbling, and this was the one. "Maybe if I use the boat to pull me in the air, I can fly further over the bay and soar into the air. I can fly over coral reefs and the big blue whales if I tie more palms together and use them as sails." The very next morning, when conditions were just right, she tied palms as sails this time and climbed out of sight. She waited for the wind and said a little prayer and casted her reel high into the air. With her daddy's fishing pole, she tried to hook onto a boat. All she needed was it to be fast, and it also had to float. She just doesn't quit. The penguins on the beach cried. She's back at it again with yet another try. She's going to hurt herself, another replied. Doesn't she know that penguins can't fly? Phae closed her eyes as she heard the rumblings of the crowd. A race was about to start, and the boat's engines were loud. She flapped her palm sails to give them some wind as she waited for the boat race to begin. Water shimmered as far as the penguin could see, and waves crashed as the light for the race turned green. Engines roared, and there was a pull at the line. It tugged her away. She jumped just in time. Catching the wind, she dipped up and down. Closing her eyes, she felt the world all around. The palms held together nicely. Under the rope she tied. What a spectacle to see a penguin glide. She's really flying, the penguins in the crowd below said. They splished and they splashed as she soared overhead. The boat's captain looked up in awe as she went, and he steered toward shore as she began her descent. The other penguins cheered and screamed and shouted. Phae had believed in herself, even though they had doubted. When she landed on shore, they held her up high. You did it, Phae, you did it. Penguins really can fly. Adjusting her scarf, the South African penguin smiled in glee. I knew I could do it. All I needed to do was believe. Penguins Can't Fly. Written by me, Michael Woodward Jr.